Hey folks, welcome back to the channel. Happy Katie Crypto here. So, as promised, got this really nice AMA for you folks. We've written down a load of questions, so we've got those to sort of dive into in and out of this AMA with Matthew, who is the chairman of the steering group inside Terrarebels, but he's also a very valuable member. So let's go ahead and give Matt a call. See if we can't get him on the channel. Hi Matt, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you fine.
Hi Matt, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon or this evening. It depends how kind of dark it gets in the evenings here in the UK as to how you dictate it. But thank you so much for joining us. I really want to thank you for taking the time to join us and appear on the channel. I know things aren't always easy and straightforward, and there's a lot of ins and outs to all of this and stuff like that. But thank you so much from myself and my community for doing what you folks are doing, because you're not being paid. You're literally doing this because you want to do it, because it interests you as a group, and you're just picking up the pieces and trying to fix what was left behind by the previous owners. So, Matt, tell us a little bit about yourself, why you got involved in the project, and all those kind of like small little bits like that.
Sure, no problem. Well, I've been involved in the crypto space for quite some time. It's been an interest of mine, and so I'm quite aware of things that are happening across the broad crypto space. I wasn't previously an investor in Luna or Terra before the DPEG, but when the DPEG event started to happen, obviously that made a lot of headlines on crypto-focused websites, and that kind of brought my attention to Terra Luna. I mean, I was aware of Terra Luna, but I'd never particularly spent any time looking at that particular blockchain. We have limited amounts of time, and there are too many blockchains out there. But it struck me as being, something extremely unusual when that event started happening, and that brought my focus to that blockchain. And as the DPEG event unfolded, I, like many others, decided that it would be a good time to try and support the coin and buy. And I bought the coin at various points. I watched my investments go to zero multiple times. And eventually, when that bottom was reached, I bought some more at that point, and that constituted my holding in Terra Classic that I still hold today. And at that point in time, obviously there was a lot of talk on social media, a lot of chaos, and people didn't know what to do, and we were waiting for direction from TFL. And there were various things said from TFL and Do Kwon on social media, and we were waiting for some kind of resolution to what had happened. And then the announcement about the V2 chain was made, and at that point it was pretty clear, to me at least, that the community was likely to be the classic community was likely to be abandoned. Because you don't go all in on a new chain if you really are serious about fixing the problems with the current chain. So then I started digging into the community in a bit more detail. I spent a lot of time on the Agora forum, looking at different groups and what they were discussing about this event. And I've been working with one of our members, AE, on LUNACLASSIC since the very early days, discussing various strategies or proposals as to how we as a community might do something to try and help ourselves with this situation that we found ourselves in. And those discussions took various forms, and there were lots of different ideas being thrown around. And while that was going on, I started investigating the code. And I looked at what TFL had done in their emergency patch in order to disable the governance system, and I worked out a way to reverse that. And so I coded up the change, and I submitted it to the Terra Money GitHub repo with the hopes that the TFL developers might engage with me, that I might be able to in some way discuss with them and persuade them to undo what they did, or at least have a plan to undo what they did. And indeed, in the comments in TFL's own code, the developer that made the change put a comment in there saying this is intended to be reverted at some point in the future when things are clearer. So there was clearly an intention from the TFL developers themselves that the governance disabling change would be a temporary one. And I think we've referred to that specific statement in our white paper as part of our solution that we've produced from Terrarebels. And so I submitted my code change, and then other people. I actually was the second to submit it. I'd submitted my code change, and I'd been too busy working on my own change to really notice what other people were doing. And after I'd submitted my pull request to the Terra Money repo, I noticed that somebody had got there before me, a few hours before me, and submitted essentially with some small nuances the same change that I'd made. And that was EK826 Ed, and he had made a slightly different change, essentially the same thing. And I asked him some questions on why he'd done it slightly differently to me. So we got talking, we reviewed each other's code, and then a little bit later on, Zaradar submitted his version of the change, and that brought all three of us together. We reviewed each other's code. We were communicating through GitHub comments on what we'd done, and then Zaradar invited me to join a Discord server. He said it would be a better place for us to talk, so I joined the Discord server, which at that time was called LUNACLASSIC, and I then invited Ed to also join us in that same Discord server, and that's how the three of us became acquainted, and that was, if you like, the inception point where the work of Terrarebels development really began on what we now see today as V21. That was the inception point.
It's been a really, really long journey, what it seems like to be a really long journey, but in such a short amount of time. And I mean, it's really symbiotic, isn't it? The whole relationship that everybody's built together, and the way Terrarebels has been constructed is totally community driven, isn't it? You're all community members. No one's of an official TFL standing. No one's ever worked for them or anything like that.
Absolutely, that's right. We're all community members. We all have our normal lives, our other work commitments. None of us have had anything to do with Terrarebels. To do with TFL or to do with Terra Luna in anything other than an investor and community capacity before Terrarebels was formed. And I think the way that the community as a whole and Terrarebels as a portion of that community have all come together to support the Terra Classic chain, it's just it's incredible, and it's unheard of. This is absolutely a first. From my perspective, it's an absolute first in crypto history, and I think it's a fantastic thing. I think this is a fantastic thing for the crypto space to see this happening, to see such a massive disaster that has impacted so many people in such a terrible way, and for that community to be able to pick itself up and come together and try to take charge of the situation itself. I think that is just an amazing thing. And like you say, it feels like we've been working on this for years. It feels like my colleagues at Terrarebels, many of whom I count as friends now, it feels like I've known them for years, and then I realise it's only 2.5 months. So yeah, it's an amazing situation, absolutely.
Yeah, such a short space of time. There's people joining the space daily who are like, this has been going on for years now, and it's like, yeah, no, it's less than 3 months, my friend. So absolutely. Just coming off of sort of Terrarebels and the whole movement itself, the direction of it, What do you think, as from your personal standpoint, how do you think the whole movement overall is going now in comparison to, say, 2 months ago?
Well, 2 months ago, we were at a stage where we were just starting out trying to understand what had happened and whether there was any kind of resolution to it. What would TfL do? What would their activities be? How would they respond or behave towards the community? None of this was known 2.5 months ago. Now we have a much clearer picture, and we've even had some kind of fairly cryptic guidance from Do Kwon saying essentially that the chain is there for the community to, the classic chain is there for the community to adopt its own path with, is how I interpret what he tweeted. So, and I think, that's pretty much the consensus among the community, that those tweets from Do Kwon are basically saying, go ahead and fix it yourselves. And I personally believe, I've obviously listened carefully to your interview with Zaradar, and I agree with what he said, that I don't believe that TfL and Do Kwon are legally in a position where they can do very much. I think they're in a difficult place, and there's a limit to what they can do and say with respect to Terrareclassic. And so, I think he's probably gone about as far as he can in the current environment, given the legal situation that they're facing there. So, I think we are capable, certainly as a community and definitely as Terrarebels, of running the Terraclassic chain as a community chain. And I think that is the thing that has become absolutely clear at this point in time, that we can do it as a community. It's there for the taking for us to decide as a community to do it. And by community, I mean everyone. I mean the members of the community who are investors, the validator node operators, and the development team that is both Terrarebels and third-party developers who are maybe working on projects that they want to bring on top of the Terraclassic blockchain. This community as a whole, we just have to decide to do it, and it's there, it's done. So, Terrarebels has, at the very start, we made a promise. We promised that we would build a solution that would restore governance of the blockchain to the community. And following the passing of the burn tax proposal, we also promised that we would implement that burn tax proposal. And with our recent release of our V21 software update, we have met those promises. And we're now in a situation where we're waiting to see the outcome of the decisions of validator node operators to take that software update. And it's our belief that validator node operators are very positive and are very keen to adopt that software release. So we're watching and waiting at this point in time.
Yeah, and I mean the watching and waiting part's been great on this proposal, because we're having a fair few validators just coming out and outright saying we support it. We're going to do that update. And it really does look like the sentiment towards everything. It looks like V21's definitely going to happen. So, Matt, it's not really ever a competition between who's the best dev team, who's the best community and things like that. But ultimately, there really isn't a stronger community out there. And this community's been formed in a very short space of time, from survivors of the capitulation event, people who bought on the way down and got burnt, and just people that are just joining the space. I mean, what other dev teams are putting proposals up that are everything that the community wants? I don't think there isn't anything that the community have wanted that you've not done. I mean, you guys you never fail to impress, ever, in my opinion. It's constant transparency, white papers, really professional answers to everything. You've got teams, I think the dev team, last time I spoke to Zardar, it was like 17, 18 strong. I mean, and it doesn't stop here, does it, at the end of this proposal? Matt, can you talk to us a little bit about why the governance is so important, as a tool for the community to utilize, why there's going to be more proposals, and can you also explain about the parameter change proposals that are going to have to put up for 3568? As far as Ed's made us aware, there's going to be another proposal, isn't there, for the actual parameter change?
Yeah, sure. So taking those one at a time, the governance system is critical for the community to make its views known. And this is the system by which the community as a whole is able to exert their control over the future direction of the Terrareclassic blockchain. This is what it means to be a fully decentralized system, a fully decentralized network. The Terrareclassic governance system is in essence a DAO, and it is the Terrareclassic blockchain, having that DAO at its heart, is a fully decentralized organization comprising of all of the community members. At the moment, only a very small proportion of that community is able to have their say, is able to vote, because of the issues that we've previously discussed, that V21 is there to resolve. Once V21 is live, then every member of the community will have the opportunity to delegate their Luna, as much or as little of it as they see fit, to the validator nodes of their choice, and then participate in the governance process through voting on proposals. And it's really important that the community does participate, because without that community guidance, the development teams can't really know what it is that the community wants to achieve with the chain in the future. There will be lots of ideas put forward, which will result in proposals from various groups, community-led proposals, maybe Terrarebels-led proposals, maybe validator group-led proposals, maybe proposals from projects that are building their technology on top of the blockchain that want to see something particular happen within the core protocol. So there's a whole raft of different areas where these proposals could come from. But at the end of the day, it's the Terrareclassic community, it's the holders of the governance token, LUNACLASSIC, which will decide which of those proposals has the merit to go forward and be implemented, and which should not be implemented through voting or through the governance system. So yeah, this for me is why that is so important, and why it's important that we restore it. And just to be clear, when we say that people have the opportunity to participate, what we mean is that is entirely their choice. If their choice is not to vote, that is just as valid a choice as any other choice. People should not be criticised for not voting. If people feel that a proposal has been put forward that they cannot vote, they cannot in their conscience vote on, that should be respected as a decision, just as much as voting yes, no, or abstain. So the point is that the people in the community will have that opportunity, they will have the ability to make that choice, whereas at the moment the vast majority of them don't have that choice. Okay, really? So that covers the first part of your question.
Yeah.
The second part of the question, I think, was about the new parameter change proposal that is associated with the burn tax. And the new parameter change proposal is necessary because the way that we implemented the burn tax, we implemented it in a way where the community can choose what the level of that tax should be. And the level of that tax is set through a parameter change proposal. And in order to activate that burn tax, we have to set what the initial rate will be. In the proposal that passed, a rate of 1.2% was chosen, and so that is what the initial parameter change proposal will go in as, to set a rate of 1.2%. But in the future, once that burn tax is operating, once we get feedback from projects that are trying to build their utility on top of the blockchain, once we see how LUNACLASSIC and potentially the stable coins going forward get utilized, there may be a need to change that tax rate. And this gives the ability for the community to decide to change it without having to go through another software development and testing cycle, which is why we felt it was important to implement that as a configurable parameter.
Absolutely awesome breakdowns, Matt. I really appreciate you taking the multiple questions at one time as well. It's not always easy to be put on the spot, and we're just recording this, we're going as we go. It's totally, you know what I mean, none of it's ever planned out or anything like that. So I really appreciate you answering those questions for us, Matt. So can you now just explain to the community a little bit more from your perspective about the kind of Sherlock work you did around the validity of the actual burn wallet, and explaining to the community, because there's going to be so many people that tune into this, and you explaining it would be great, of how the burn wallet's not actually a burn wallet in itself, and that is a protocol wallet. Could you elaborate a little bit on that, please?
Yeah, sure. Well, I mean, as you know, when Do Kwon tweeted that burn address, and people started of their own initiative sending their coins to burn to that address, it quickly became clear that this address is not in the form of a typical burn address that you would see on other blockchains like Bitcoin or Ethereum, where the address is typically a null address. It's either all zeros or all zeros with some small hex string like DEAD at the end, and those kind of wallets are wallets on those blockchains, and we know that those burn addresses are legitimate and secure because we know that the private keys for those special kind of addresses can never be generated, at least not with the computing technology that exists at the moment. But the address that was tweeted by Do Kwon looked like a regular wallet address to all intents and purposes, and then people started questioning, how do we know that this address is legit? Well, the first answer to that question was there was a reference to that address in a comment in the code. So that predated, obviously that comment predated Do Kwon's tweet. So that was part of the reason to believe that the address was legitimate. I mean, secondly, you would not imagine that a figure such as Do Kwon would knowingly and carelessly tweet a wallet address that wasn't a burn wallet. You know, he's not a silly person. So I'm sure, there are those people have their opinions of him, but at the end of the day, I personally felt it was extremely unlikely that he would do such a thing. So just the fact that he was prepared to tweet the address probably suggested that it was legitimate. But the community still had questions, and I decided, the rest of the dev team was very busy, obviously, building various aspects of the testnet and V21 at that time. So I decided, whilst I had a bit of free time on my hands, to go and dig into the code surrounding the burn module and understand exactly where this address, what its origins were. And unlike blockchains like Ethereum and Bitcoin, the Terrareclassic blockchain, which is based on Cosmos SDK, has what are called modules at its heart, and those modules are kind of analogous to built-in smart contracts. And the burn module is itself one such module, and the core code automatically generates module addresses for each of those modules. And indeed, the burn module address is the address that Do Kwon tweeted. And I worked back through the code, found the raw form of the address, converted it into the Betch32 format, and it matched the address that Do Kwon tweeted. And so with that, we were able to be 100% confident that the address tweeted was the address of the burn module, and that it's not a wallet address, and that when coins are sent to it, they essentially get stored in that burn module waiting to be burned at the end of the epoch. So yeah, that was the investigation that I did.
And that was all totally in your free time. You literally, it wasn't even free time, because free time is something that is a privilege to most of us that we don't really have at the moment. But nonetheless, we're fighting the good fight. We love doing what we're doing, and we're here nonetheless. But you just doing that just shows how much you're inspired by the community and you want to help them, you didn't have to do that. I mean, it was a total ball ache, so to speak, to do that, but you did it nonetheless, Matt. So I do thank you for doing that. I really appreciate you breaking it down again. So now moving on to it's 4159. I always get it. So many proposals. 4159 text proposal. Matt, what do you think the outcome's going to be? Do you think we're going to get the response from TfL? Do you think it's going to go through as a pass? It's going to go through as a pass by the looks of it, unless we had someone like Orion Money vote no. But even then, I don't think it would matter now, would it? It would still go through.
I mean, as you know, 4195 was submitted by AE, who in his personal capacity as a community member, and it's not a proposal that was submitted by Terrarebels themselves. So I can give you my personal opinion on it, but obviously Terrarebels' viewpoint is obviously from a moral point of view, it was a great proposal to put in to get the community's approval, if you like, for what we're trying to do with V21. And to give TfL yet another opportunity to step up if they wish to do so. But the way I kind of look at it is this, and this might be a bit controversial, but it is my view. So the way I look at it is this: validator node operators either own or rent the hardware, the infrastructure that they operate in order to be validator node operators, and the governance system is not designed and cannot dictate to them what software they do or do not install on that infrastructure. That's their choice. And the core protocol of Terrareclassic itself has guards in it to protect against malicious versions of the software, i.e. if an insufficient number of nodes are running a particular version, you know that critical number is 1/3 of the nodes. If less than 1/3 of the nodes are running a version that doesn't produce the same hash as the rest of the nodes, then those minority will be jailed and eventually slashed, and that's part of the core protocol. So my personal viewpoint is that whilst I think it was right to ask the question that AE asked, I think at the end of the day, it's up to validator node operators to decide whether to install the software release that we've produced on their hardware, and they will make that choice based on their own motives, their own requirements for their infrastructure, largely irrespective of what the outcome of 4195 is.
I totally agree with you there. We've always gone off of this whole, there are no leaders in this. There are no leaders. There's just communities, groups of people all working towards that one goal. And even if V21 goes ahead and these validators do obviously upgrade, it's still not a control thing. It's never going to be a control thing. And that much has been proven by you folks putting up proposals for the community to vote on, because that's the way it works. That's the way the governance works. Otherwise, anyone would be able to just go in and change whatever they wanted, right?
Exactly. I mean, ultimately, the core protocol itself, the governance system, and the validator node operators as a body that run the nodes that create consensus on the network are the guards against anybody just changing whatever they want, as you say. And it's a combination of those factors that have to all be in alignment in order for something to get changed. So, I think as a community body, incorporating all of those facets that we've talked about, everybody wants to see a bright future for the Terrareclassic blockchain. Everybody wants to see the chain become successful and return in some part to its former glory. And we all know that cannot happen unless governance is restored. And that cannot happen unless either TfL suddenly pop up and decide to start participating again, or the Terrarebels release is adopted by validator node operators. Without those things, the future is very, very uncertain.
So Matt, let's say in the most ideal and perfect, excuse me, and perfect outcome of the next coming weeks, this V21 update happening, it all happens, staking comes back, the burn tax is implemented. What kind of doors are opened up from staking? Because it's not just staking itself that comes back. There are lots more things, aren't there, with doors that open. Could you elaborate a little bit more on that?
Well, I mean, once governance is restored and people can stake and participate in governance, then it means that we can start to look at all sorts of future changes, future improvements. Probably the thing that most people are really interested in is the stablecoin algorithm and how we look at what is the future for that stablecoin for USTC. We know that a big part of the community are USTC holders, and I think Terrarebels want to make them really be sure that they are not forgotten in this. I know there's been a lot of focus, especially with the burn tax on Lunc, but USTC holders also are an equally important part of the community, and certainly we need to look at all the options available to us for a revitalized USTC, and that requires the full governance system to be in place from Terrarebels' perspective. It's not something that we would want to try to do with this broken governance system that we have at the moment, which is why we've done things in the order that we have. That's why it was important to focus on Lunc and on the governance system initially, so that we can truly get the community's input on that aspect of the stablecoin, the whole community. So I think that's partly the doors that are opened, and secondarily, there are a large number of projects, increasing number of projects that want to bring their utility, their applications, their games, their NFTs to the LUNACLASSIC chain. It's essential that we bring new utility to the chain in order to achieve that success that we just talked about, that future success. And so I think having an active and properly functioning governance system is critical to these projects having the confidence to want to invest in invest their project time and choose the Terra chain as their platform. So for me, these are the two key things that are really enabled by having that governance system restored.
And going on the kind of USTC subject here, we know Orion Money have actually stated in AMA that they did with the community a while back that they would be setting the sun on the project in around 2 years. It's actually here on the website. There is all details about it, and fixing USTC would potentially keep a project like Orion Money on the chain, and their project's huge, holding a 13.80% vote power is no small amount or small contribution to the chain itself. So keeping current utility and bringing new utility projects, ideas and everything to the chain is just everything, isn't it? You could burn as many coins as you want, right? But ultimately, if there's no one to use the coins, it's not going to work, is it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you know from discussions with other members of Terrarebels that Terrarebels has its own view on the burn tax. Of course, we implemented it because the community definitely want it. And as Zaradar said in his interview with you, the one really important aspect of the burn tax is that it was a catalyst to bring the community together, something the community could agree on and get behind. And I think, for that reason, if no other reason, that was a very, very good reason for us as Terrarebels to want to implement that. And then obviously the governance vote that passed it gave us the mandate to do it. But in terms of restoring utility to the chain, burning coins is not going to do that on its own. As you say, the only thing that will make the chain great again will be because people want to use it for real world utility, for games, for applications, for NFTs, for anything that you could think of. There's all manner of different projects out there coming forward now that they see we're getting very, very close to the end game on the governance restoration. And I think it's really important that we don't get too focused on burning coins as a means to an end, because it is only a means to an end. It's not an end in itself, and we're never going to be able to increase the value of any coins just by burning coins. This is something that I think some members of the community have a misunderstanding about, that they think if we burn enough coins, the price will start going up.
Exactly.
But
exactly.
There may be some small impact in that way. There may be temporary impact in that way. But if we want to have a lasting value reflected in the price of the coin, that is only going to be achieved through utility and projects actually using the chain, and customers of those projects buying the coin in order to participate in those project services. So yeah, that's why this is so important.
Yeah, totally. So like holding, I always say this to people, holding a bag and participating in burning is great, but sitting on your bag doesn't actually do anything for the price. In fact, it stagnates the price because no one's trading it, no one's using it. I always like to say to people, if you bring enough utility to this chain, there won't be enough coins to go around. And this much is clear through a coin like SHIB. I mean, that supply is absolutely ridiculous on any scale. That's some totally unfathomable numbers to think of in your head. 557 trillion coins. But they hold a number 16 position, and it's just because they have so much utility. They've got these other coins. They've got their kind of governance / DAO voting system through Bone and Leash, which is created by a development team that, in my opinion, they just suck. They don't do anything for the community. And this always puts me back to Terrarebels and just the fact that you guys will strive to do nothing but bring utility, and what you're working on and everything that you're doing enables utility to come back, because as it stands, why does anyone want to come to a chain that you can't even stake your coins? The governance system's not turned on. And so yeah, Matt, should we move on to the community Q&A? I know you're probably dreading it. I am too, because I hate asking these kind of questions, but are you more than happy to proceed?
It's fine. It's fine. I'm
Thank
ready.
you.
I can't promise I'll have all the answers, but I'm certainly ready.
I've picked out a few because there was hundreds upon hundreds throughout all of the platforms we asked on. So the first one, and I think this is quite viable, is what is required of a chairman of the steering group, and what does the steering group actually do?
Okay, well, the steering group, because Terrarebels is a voluntary team, we're just a bunch of people who are enthusiasts about Terraclassic. We are Terraclassic community members, as we previously touched on. So we're a bunch of volunteers all trying to collaborate and work to achieve, these good things on the Terraclassic blockchain. And we can't, we've got something like 65 people who are contributing in some meaningful way to what we do in various different parts of the Terrarebels group. And we can't manage that without having some form of structure to make decisions that affect Terrarebels as a whole. Obviously, each of the teams make their own internal team decisions, but when it comes to making a decision that affects Terrarebels as a whole, how do we do that? Do we give some guy the crown and say you're the boss? But we're not a company, we're not an organisation, we're just a group of volunteers. So we decided that we needed to have a decentralised way of running Terrarebels to kind of reflect the decentralisation that's inherent in the blockchain. And so we decided to form a committee structure that would basically have representation from all of the key areas of Terrarebels. And that committee would vote to decide on issues that affect Terrarebels as a whole. And because our teams are extremely professional, staffed with extremely experienced, great people who are contributing their time, their free time, and contributing the experience and skills that they've honed over many years. And you yourself know that you know, many of the people in Terrarebels, we're not spring chickens, we're not young. And we bring that experience to this blockchain because we believe in it. And we wanted the decision-making body that governs Terrarebels as a whole to reflect that experience, to reflect that professionalism, to be run in a proper way. And so when we formed the steering group, which was done in the first steering group meeting of which we held in June, one of the first order of business was to elect a chairman, and by popular demand, I was chosen. And foolishly or not, I accepted the challenge. So that's how I became chairman. And the role of the chairman is to ensure that the committee meetings are run in an orderly way, to make sure that the steering group as a whole is considering and focused on the key issues that really matter to us, and to make sure that steering group members are properly informed of when meetings are happening, to make sure that we have enough members present when meetings are held, that the quorum is met, and then to make sure that decisions are properly recorded and published in formal minutes, so that not only the community but Terrarebels itself can get to see that how the decisions are being made, and these decisions are being taken in an orderly way.
Thank you so much, Matt. That's not the most easiest question to answer, but you just like you said, none of you are spring chickens. You've all got so many years experience. You're very weathered. You know the ins and outs. You know the do's. You know the don'ts. And it's there's going to be a lot of people, isn't there? A lot of naysayers. But when this thing starts to get back to normal, Luna before went through the roof, didn't it? From being a very, very cheap coin to all the way up to like $112 per coin. I mean, this all can happen again, and with the community strength, bringing utility back, keeping people on chain and things like that. So moving on to the next question, and there's a few in here you've answered, so I've actually crossed them out, and it is pretty much are you folks paid? Is anybody paid or anything like that? Will you be getting paid in the future?
Right now, none of us are being paid. I believe that the Discord server admins have set up a tip bot, which allows community members to give tips to anybody, other community members, Terrarebels members. I think that was done as a bit of fun. I don't think it's certainly nothing that was part of Terrarebels itself, part of its strategy. I think it was something that was done to just to create a bit of entertainment on the Discord server for the community. And I think a lot of members that have, including myself, that have received tips have sent them straight to burn. I can tell you that's certainly what I've done with all the tips that I've received. And the reason I did that is not because I'm not grateful for the tips. It's because I started this activity as a volunteer, and I intended to see it through to the end as an unpaid volunteer. And whilst I respect people who want to show their appreciation by tipping me, my personal view is that I don't want to receive any money for what I'm doing, because I'm doing it because I like what I do, I love what I do, and I'm a committed member of the community. And when I say I'm going to do something in a particular way, I want to follow that through to the end. So yeah, none of us are paid. There are no salaries. There's no. We're not receiving funding officially from anywhere. The only source of any kind of payments is this tip bot, which allows people to tip us with Lunc. And the tips that are being sent are they're not large value. So yeah, I think hopefully that answers that question.
It totally does. And I'm just wanting to add to that whole tip bot system thing. That actual program that they implemented, the admins, is amazing. And I know Vegas's team are actually working on a similar tip bot for Telegram. Now, I myself am able to receive tips. Any member that joins is also able to receive tips. It's not something that was directly set up for you folks, nor was it an idea put forward by you folks. It was totally community led, and I think it's great. And at some point, I believe that you folks will open your own node and you won't need to be paid because you'll figure it all out yourself. The same way that anyone else would utilize the blockchain in their position, you folks will do the same. And yeah, so the next question, Matt, is do you think TFL are going to respond within the 10 days?
Personally, no, I don't. Time will tell whether I'm right or wrong.
My exact same. People have asked me if I think, and I completely believe they've passed the torch. The tweet about conceptual mastery is total and utter them just going, do what you want with it.
Yeah.
Do what you want with it.
Yeah, exactly. I think I think that was as close as they could get to saying, yeah, it's yours. Go ahead. But yeah, time will tell. From our perspective as Terrarebels, our goal is to restore governance and implement the burn tax. If that happens through our software release or it happens through a TFL software release, it doesn't matter. The point is the end result is the same. And so we would consider it, if TFL did come back within that 10 days and say, fine, we're gonna take this code and put it into our repo and issue a new release, or we've implemented it but in a slightly different way, and here it is, and we're gonna put it, issue a new release. If they were to do that, we would be more than happy with that, and the result is the same.
And we're very fortunate to have people like you that have stepped up, the Terrarebels community in general, all of the devs that have all stepped up to actually fix this and not leave it as an abandoned project. I honestly think you're just doing what there could have been some very malicious actors that got in play to do what you folks are doing and put themselves in a similar situation that the SHIB devs have, where it's all kind of focused around coins they've created and not the actual community coin itself. So I'm very, very happy to have you guys where you are. So the next question is once V21 happens, if it does happen, which it looks like it's going to, and we say in the best case that it does, Matt, will it be easier for Terrarebels to implement changes in the future once you folks have the current software repository that's active?
Well, I guess will it be easier for us? I hope so, yes. But again, it's kind of like a how long is a piece of string question. Time will tell. Maybe we will go through the same process that we're going through with V21 with every future release we put out. I honestly don't know. I think once assuming that V21 is successfully deployed, then I think that will set a precedent amongst validator node operators, and I think yes, all indications would be that future releases would be a much simpler process.
That's good to hear, especially because a lot of people give it the whole it's parameter change after proposal, after this, after that, after nothing, and nothing's happening, the price isn't going up. But we have so many people who engage in the content, know the drill, know what's going on, and understand the process. So Matt, the last question. Let
me just add one bit to that point, which is that the community needs to understand that if this blockchain is community run, community led, there will be proposal after proposal after proposal that require votes. That is what it means to be a community governed chain. If people are getting tired or bored with too many proposals, it kind of suggests that they don't really want to get involved in running the chain. So, I think, community need to think about that and understand that for the chain to be properly community run, there will have to be a pipeline of proposals and there will constantly be votes going on, I would say,
And it's not just you that can put I mean, I can put a proposal right now, can't I, for anything that I want? It's a community governance.
Absolutely. Anybody can put up a proposal. Even somebody who isn't a community member can put up a proposal. In order to put up a proposal, you simply have to create the if it's a text proposal, you have to create the text of it, or you have to create the parameter value changes that you want for a parameter proposal, and then you submit it. And the first stage is that it needs to achieve a deposit. Now, the person submitting the deposit, the person submitting the proposal can choose to pay some or all of that deposit. Obviously, if they're a community member, they will hold Lunc, and they will be able to pay for some or all of that deposit. If they're not a community member, they won't be able to pay for the deposit because they don't hold Lunc. So that would then rely on community members reading that draft proposal and deciding it has merit and deciding to fund it. Once the deposit level is reached, then the proposal becomes active for voting, and at that point the community decide whether it should proceed based on the voting process.
Amazing breakdowns, Matt. Thank you so much for answering that community Q&A there. I really appreciate it. Once again, it's never easy for someone in your position to answer it, especially because you don't speak for yourself for the whole of Terrarebels, and I really appreciate it, Matt. I really appreciate it. So the last thing I wanted to kind of speak about with you, and from your own perspective, is about the community pool burns. And do you think it's good that we're going to burn our own community pool, a percentage of it every month? Does it make sense? What do you think?
Well, I mean, obviously the community voted for that with 40-80, so we kind of have to respect that that's what the community wants at this point in time. But obviously, it kind of comes back to that previous question that was asked about will Terrarebels be paid in the future? And the answer is, of course, yes. There is a limit to how much voluntary work anybody can be expected to do. And there's a limit to how much people can spend their personal time on a project. You know, at some point, people need their personal time back again. They have families, they have other responsibilities that sit outside of Terra Classic. And so in the future, we need a model where developers can commit significant portions of paid time to do the work that needs to be done on Terra Classic, and they have to be paid from somewhere. And obviously the community pool would be one of those sources of funding. And if we burn it, then we don't have that source of funding. That's just from the perspective of the core team looking after and maintaining the core protocol. But then what about projects that want to come and build fantastic utility on our blockchain, but they don't have funding? And we, the community, see that fantastic project and we're convinced by it, we read their white paper, and we decide as a community, yeah, we'd like to fund these guys because what they're doing is really cool. Again, we could choose to fund that from the community pool, but if we've burnt the community pool, then we won't be able to fund it. So I think, you know, that is another area where right now it seems like a good thing to do, and maybe it is the right thing to do right now, but going forward, maybe that decision needs to be changed. And because it was done as a parameter proposal, we can submit a new parameter, anybody can submit a new parameter proposal to change that decision in the future when there is something convincing to give us a reason to change it, you see. So we would, you know, if there's a convincing reason to change it, that would form part of the proposal's explanation, yeah? And people will read that, they will consider it and vote on it. And again, the majority vote will decide what happens going forward.
Definitely. And I'm trying to not so much raise awareness, but kind of, because what a lot of most people just saw on that was 35% burn tax. Wow, they're going to be burning so much. 35% of the community pool, and it's really not going to work out as much. And ultimately, we're shooting ourselves in the foot because we reduce the amount that we can do. And this is where governance proposals for the community pool spends actually come into play. And that's what they're for, to drive marketing campaigns, pay for all kinds of new projects that want to come on board and need a small piece of funding, and airdrops and all other stuff like that, right?
Exactly. I mean, you see. I don't want to speak wrongly of V2, but you see that already happening with V2, in that they already, when they launched it, made sure that they had a pool that they could use to fund and encourage projects. And whilst I don't necessarily see Classic as in competition with V2, I think V2 has its own set of problems. We ought to be treating our community projects the same way and have the same opportunities for them. And our community pool will be a primary source for that.
I totally 100% agree with you, and I think hopefully the community sort of gauged that burning our own community pool is in itself ineffective, and it's not something that we should do, and possibly a parameter change in the future probably would be a good idea to get that removed, so we can make sure that keeping validators happy and everything like that, because we need validators to run the chain. And Matt, do you think that there's going to be a lot of validators coming on board once that 60-day period is kind of passed?
I absolutely do. I think there will be a lot of community-led validator projects coming on board. And I know just from questions that are being asked within the Terrarebels Discord that this is an extremely interesting project idea for many people. So yeah, I would expect to see a large influx of new validator nodes once that waiting period is over.
It's an exciting time. I myself, as you know, I've got dreams of opening a validators node. So Matt, there's been a few dates thrown out there. Well, not so much dates, but like average timescales. And I think Ed said a few times through different kinds of messages, and people take them out of context. But one big question that is actually going around is, when can we actually see the burning and staking come back if V21 all goes according to plan? What's the ideal time frame for this? Can you provide us an answer possibly?
Not really, because it depends on when validator node operators actually install it. But the burning will happen once the parameter change proposal is passed. We don't know when exactly we would submit that or who would submit it. So I imagine it would be submitted by us because we implemented it that way. But of course, there's nothing to stop a community member submitting it. And once that is passed, then the burning would become active for the burn tax proposal 3568. But in terms of reactivating governance, I think you have to rely on what Ed is telling you there. I can't say anything that would contradict what he's already said.
Totally, and I've always seen it like this. This could go really fast or it could go really slow depending on how fast we get each validator to go to GIT Hub and upgrade to that new repository code base. Matt, thank you so much for all your time. Is there anything you want to sort of get a message out to the community, kind of next steps for them, what you'd like them to focus on, or anything like that you'd like to say to them just before we end this amazing interview?
All I would really like to say is to thank the community for their ongoing support of Terrarebels, because without the community support that we've had, our job would have been impossible. So I think that is the best message to finish on.
Thank you so much, Matt, and thank you on behalf of the community. I have no doubt I can thank you on behalf of them, because you just have so much support, and here at Happy Catty Crypto we will always stand by anyone who's supporting the cause and the movement and getting things forward. And you folks, really, you've changed the game. You've changed the concept of, like, there was so much mistrust, and you're bringing back you're not just bringing back a coin, you're bringing back trust. You're restoring order back to the crypto space. And there's a lot of people, isn't there, that believe, and I myself and Vegas solely believe that this, once it was all going and things start going upwards and stuff like that, we could possibly carry the next bull market.
Yeah, I mean, I think as Zaradar mentioned, the next bull market is likely to be the business bull market, which means that the utility that we see will be enterprise business driven projects and services. And I think that is a really exciting time for a blockchain like LUNACLASSIC, because of the nature of the blockchain and the nature of the stable coin that was originally its heart. And I think that is why that has to be a big focus of what we do going forward. And yeah, I think the future is extremely bright and exciting.